Good morning, church family. So good to see you. You're with us, and those that are in special need of prayer, we're thinking of you. And so glad that Sister Carol was able to be here today, and also that Kathy Cleveland's over here. We're glad to see Kathy. And we've been praying for both you and Dale. We keep that up. So just glad to see you this morning. If you are back with us and I haven't seen you in a while, we're glad you're here as well. I'd hate to overlook someone, and we're thankful for each face that is here today. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. We keep cooking from the back of the cabinet today in 3 John. And in 3 John, we sort of have an interesting diet that comes our way. Maybe you think of things in this way. If you think about a recipe, some recipes hinge on the order in which things are done. And so you may start reading through this recipe, you see all the ingredients. If you don't pause and read the instructions, you might really blow the recipe, because a lot of times it will say first, mix together dry ingredients. Now, it's good to follow the order of the recipe that is there, and we do things first. If we get them out of order, it confuses everything, blows everything up. Things just don't work right if you don't do those things. And that works a little bit at church, not entirely. Of course, first at church is Jesus Christ. He is Lord and Master of all. But there are some things that if we get them out of order, we mess up the recipe of the kingdom, the recipe of church, and we'll destroy that if we try. Maybe you know someone that just has to be first in everything. First takes on a little different dynamic there. I sit in my office, and especially at the beginning of the school year when we start Rainbow Kids, one of the things that I hear most as they are coming down the aisle, no, it's not your turn to be up there today. You come back here. You're not first today. They take turns being first in the lines that come into the building. And one of the hardest things for them to learn is that they don't get to be first every day, especially some of those that have been first their whole life. And now they show up with a group of kids at Rainbow Kids, and they don't get to be first every day. And maybe you know someone like that. They just have to be first at everything. And it's not healthy competition. It's not a matter of aspiring, I run the race to win the race, the way Paul talks about. No, this is an unhealthy aspect of being first. I heard on ESPN radio this week, I'm sorry I didn't get all the names down, but a female soccer player who hired someone to injure a competitor on her own team that was competing with her for playing time. She had to be first. She was getting a little older, wasn't quite as fast, actually hired someone to injure a fellow player, so she got her playing time. Well, she had to be first, and that's not a good thing at all. Well, in the back of the cabinet, we meet someone like that today. We meet a fellow by the name of Diotrephes. We're also going to meet a fellow by the name of Gaius and a fellow by the name of Demetrius. We're going to meet a church family. We're going to have a letter, and the author of that letter is going to be the elder again. It's going to be John. So he's going to write this letter into this environment. And this time, last week, remember, we found out that they're not okay. You don't have to give the right hand of fellowship to everyone. Today, John has to flip that script and say, wait a minute, who gives you the right not to welcome people, not to give them the right hand? You're standing in the way of something that is healthy. The church needs to hear something. Matter of fact, I wrote something to the church and you didn't let it go through, or you didn't accept it, and you're hurting people by not letting the truth out. And so we get that in our environment today. So 3 John is a fun little read. Won't take us too long, only 15 verses. The elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, notice he has been loved twice. He's got truth coming twice. Beloved, I pray that in all respects you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. And before you read any further, stop there for a moment. Hear what John said. I pray that you will prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. How many of you want to be blessed physically with the way that your soul is prospering this morning? That's a serious condition, isn't it? It could be a little bit of a reprimand. What if my soul's not doing very well? What if you could tell how my soul was doing by how I was being blessed or prospering? Now, Gaius is okay. He's a good guy. And John is actually writing to him saying, I hope that you are blessed in body and in prospering financial things, just as your spirit is flourishing. You're doing great. How many times does it help you to take a stand if someone that you respect in authority says, you're doing great, you're right where you need to be, doing what you ought to be doing? When the world begins to attack you, or when someone starts to come against you, it's much easier to stand if you have that voice in your ear that says, you're okay, you're doing great. And that's how Gaius is talked to by John. You're doing great. He says in verse 3, I was very glad when brethren came and testified to your truth, that you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than this, to hear of my children walking in truth. Gaius, you're doing great. Keep up the good work. John needs Gaius to do something for him. Gaius goes to church with this guy named Diotrephes, or he has influence in a system that has Diotrephes in it. And John needs Gaius to help function in the system. Sort of like when Paul writes to the fellow yoke worker to help out Euodia and Syntyche, two sisters at Philippi that are having trouble getting along. He writes someone to help them out. This time he writes to Gaius and says, we've got something you need to be on top of. Just want to make you aware of this. You're doing great, so you have the strength and the power. You can stand up to this. I don't want you to be afraid of this fellow. Sometimes we get fearful. In verse 5, beloved, you are acting faithfully in whatever you accomplish for the brethren, and especially when they're strangers. All right, so now I've got brethren that are not known to this environment, and something is being accomplished for them. They're being advantaged. They're being advanced in some way. And they have testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God, for they went out for the sake of the name, not accepting anything from the Gentiles. So I've got this scene going on where someone went out in the sake of the name. They're brothers in the church or sisters in the church. They went out as ambassadors, as missionaries in some way, and they came to this place. Well, it's where Gaius and Diotrephes are. Therefore, we ought to support such men so that we may be fellow workers with the truth. Supporting missions is a good thing to do. Thank you for all your help in our Mission Sunday. Thank you for all the support you give to our local congregation, and appreciate that much more than your money, your prayers, your time, your energy, your efforts. Appreciate all of those things. Had a great time out at Lance and Ashley's last night with 40 of the ones that went to Friendsgiving. And so only 7 of us adults there, so we got a youth movement going. But a lot of, it was just a blast. People that just serve in so many ways. You support and you help and you bless, and we're grateful for that. Well, John writes to Gaius, says you're doing great, says some folks are coming and have been out in the sake of the name, but I've got a little problem. Verse 9, I wrote something to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first among them, does not accept what we say. Diotrephes, who loves to be first. Oh, and you think about those times when this apostle John had to hear some of those things. The one that's writing this. Remember his mom? his mom goes to Jesus and says, hey, I'd really like for my sons, one to sit on your right hand and one to sit on your left hand when you come in your kingdom. That's John the elder. His mother went to Jesus and said, can my son be first? And Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. There's a baptism that they have to go through. By the way, it's not my place to give those roles. That's for someone else. But John's mother went and said, I'd like for my sons, James and John, to be number 1 and number 2, right hand, left hand. I want them to be in your cabinet when you're king. I know you're missing the point. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. If you want to be first, you're going to have to be last. It doesn't work where you come up to Jesus and say, I'd like to be in your cabinet. It doesn't function that way. And Diotrephes loves to be first among them. So he's got a system like this, but he wants to be first. If you've ever been in a church where someone wanted to be in control, they wanted to be first. I've seen it be an older sister in the church where she had to be first. I've seen it be an older man in the church where he had to be. I've seen it be a younger man in the church. Or anyone that says, wait a minute, I've got to be first. Our girls started reading. I don't know if y'all get to be exposed to the little books that kids read now. I have no idea what they're reading. I don't get to read to my granddaughter enough. But back in the day, they had a little book that they started reading. It was called Me First, I've Got to Be First. I don't know if you remember any of those type books, but it was a book about selfishness. And you try to read those little kid stories to them. That's who Diotrephes is. Me first, I've got to be first. And what happens if someone comes in and I accept them? What happens to my status? The one who has to be first is threatened by anyone else being effective. You ever thought about that? The one who has to be first is threatened by anyone else being effective. I hate to use sports illustrations all the time, but I watch a lot of sports, so they come up. Kristaps Porzingis scored 32 points against San Antonio the other night. So did Luka. Luka had 14 assists. 7 of those were directly to Porzingis. He was making sure that Porzingis got his points. The assists were more important than the points. Do you see that that's a team that says, I don't have to be first. I don't have to outscore. I don't have to have the most. I can feed someone and let them succeed. Let them excel. How easy is that for you to do? Athletically, academically, spiritually. How hard is it for you to celebrate when someone else really does well? That's hard, isn't it? When someone else really excels and does super great, that's hard for us to sometimes acknowledge. I mean, the Springtown Band made it all the way to state, all the way to the finals at state, got 9th in the state. Yeah. We're celebrating that they did well, but all the other bands, you have to celebrate that too, right? And you're not compromised in any way because someone else excels. You're not compromised. You haven't lost anything. And that is a critical point. That is the lesson this morning. Diotrephes thinks he loses something at church if anyone else excels at church. He thinks he is diminished if anyone else is doing great. So when strangers come in, he won't accept what John wrote. Evidently, that might be the book of 1 John, by the way. This may be the book of 1 John that Diotrephes maybe intercepted, or maybe it came to his church family and he's rejecting it. Oh, we're not going to listen to what John says. We're not going to pay any attention to him. So he does not accept what the truth sayer John had written. Verse 10, for this reason, if I come, I will call attention to his deeds, which he does, unjustly accusing us with wicked words, and not satisfied with this, he himself does not receive the brethren either, and he forbids those who desire to do so and puts them out of the church. He's practicing disfellowship on his own terms here, not talking about the truth. If anyone shows up and is any sort of competition for Diotrephes, he just rejects disfellowships And if you invite them into your house, Danny and Cindy let them come to their house. I just tell Danny and Cindy, you can't come to church here anymore. You accepted those horrible people into your house. That's how powerful Diotrephes is and how much he feels threatened by anyone else. We've seen people that were that power hungry, that were that avarice for their control factor, forbids them. Verse 11, beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. The one who does good is of God. The one who does evil is not of God. Simple test. How do I tell who is Diotrephes? Diotrephes is doing evil. It's not hard to tell. He's selfish, and he's restrictive, and he's doing evil against those who are standing for the good. So Diotrephes is doing evil. It's not a hard thing for you to figure out. Anytime you get into a system, figure out who is selfish, right? Figure out who is selfish. Go back to basketball. You got a guy, he's scoring 30 points a night, but he's shooting 10% on his three-pointers, and he just keeps putting them up. And the team loses every night because all he can do is shoot three-pointers every night. That's all he'll ever do is put up a three-pointer, and he's just selfish. And the whole team says, we can't win with him. He's not a blessing to our team. Diotrephes is being judged. He's not a blessing to the church. He's a detriment to the church. Verse 12, Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. And we add our testimony, and you know that our testimony is true. I don't know who Demetrius is. Is Demetrius one of the brothers who came to them and didn't get accepted? Or is Demetrius another brother in the church with Gaius and Diotrephes? I don't know. But I know Demetrius is a good guy. John is helping the church say, Gaius, I need you to stand up. I'm fixing to write to Diotrephes again. If I have to come and spank him, I'm going to come and spank him. I need you to be sure that he doesn't have control of things, that you are who you should be, loving the truth and walking in the truth. And if you need some help, Demetrius is okay. And I'm telling you, Demetrius is okay. Everybody says Demetrius is okay. So Demetrius, I'm telling you, has a great reputation. Diotrephes, not so much. I had many things to write to you, verse 13, but I'm not willing to write you them in pen and ink. But I hope to see you shortly, and we will speak face to face. Peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends by name. Strange little chapter, isn't it? Sort of cooking from the back of the cabinet. But it really just gets us back to our roots. Am I selfish or am I selfless? Am I controlling or am I enabling? Am I blessing or am I threatened by someone else doing good? What does it take away from you if someone else does great in the kingdom? Not a thing. It doesn't take anything away from you if someone else does great. Love them. Rejoice with those that rejoice. It's not a negative in any way, shape, or form. Don't be, well, here's your take home this morning. It asks the question, are you a Diotrephes or a Demetrius today? Are you someone that has to be first and have their own way and control things? Or are you someone that has a reputation for being second, being a servant, being humble, placing the needs of others above their own? This is a great place to be. If you're looking for a church home, this is a place where we have humble servant leaders who place your needs above theirs, where we have humble ministers who want you to do well and excel. We don't compete with one another. We're not in tension with one another. If Stan does well or Lance does well, we rejoice. That doesn't take anything away from whatever God gives me to do. It is our work that comes to God. If you've got an evil, unbelieving heart that is selfish, repent this morning and say, I don't want to be a Diotrephes that ruins systems. I want to be a Demetrius that blesses systems. I want to be like Gaius, who is called to help the system out and be a blessing in that system. If you're proud and arrogant and you need to repent, that's a hard thing to walk down the aisle on, but it'll change your life and bless you. If you'll humble yourself the way you just sang in the sight of the Lord. What's our song now? Put Byron on the spot.
Have thine own way.
Now we get to have thine own way, Lord. Have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Whatever God makes me to be, I'll excel in the place that he gives me to stand. Whatever God gives you to do, you're the only one that can do it. So don't feel like you have to go do someone else's job, and don't be jealous when they do their job. As together we stand and sing.